Hi everyone, I'm Karla Salp, and welcome to the very first episode of Oly Grown. It may seem like the dead of winter, which I guess technically it is, and it may be an odd time to start a gardening show, but it's really one of my favorite times of year. I'll tell you why. When the rain starts coming down and it turns gray and you have gray day after gray day here in Olympia, I start heading to my mailbox for a little pick-me-up, looking for one of those precious things called a seed catalog. Yes, I love thumbing through those in the middle of winter, looking at whatever the new plants are that have come out and dreaming about my own garden and what I'm going to plant the coming year. So this episode, we're going to talk about how to start your garden, no matter how big or small, from seed. Now I know you're as excited as I am to go out and buy those seeds for your garden and start planting, but we need to hold off and do just a little bit of planning first. If you've never gardened before, one of the first things that you'll need to do is consider how much space do you have. This might be a windowsill in your house to a massive expanse of a garden, which is an acre or two big, or somewhere in between. I myself have a pretty small area, relatively speaking, to garden. And the reason for that is there's one very important thing that you need to consider when planting your garden, and that is sunlight. Fruits and vegetables need a lot of sunshine, at least 8 hours a day during the growing season in order to grow successfully. So you need to find the spot in your yard that has the most sunshine. Now you can get a little creative here. If you just have a little sliver of sunshine that sort of moves through your yard in the day and you have the time, you could have a pot that you have even on wheels and you move the pot along with the sun. That's a lot of work, but if you're desperate to grow some of your own food, it is one way to make more space in your garden. Another thing to consider when you're talking about space in your yard is how many different crops you can plant in that space in 1 year. This is called succession planting. So what you do is you plant, for example, peas in the spring, which is a nice cold weather crop, then follow with a warmer weather crop in the middle of the summer, such as beans, and then at the end of the year, plant an overwintering crop, such as lettuce. That way you get the maximum use out of the space that you have in your garden, and that's what I do to get as much produce as I can out of the limited space that I have here. One last thing to consider before going out and buying your seeds is whether you want to save your own seeds. Now this is something you can do with any type of seed, but you may not get exactly the same thing that you planted the following year. However, when we're just talking about buying our seeds, the important thing is to consider to buy enough to save seeds as well, if that is something that's of interest to you. So now that you know exactly how much space you have to work with, it's time to actually go and select what types of things you want to grow throughout the year. If we're starting from seed, which we're talking about today, you can find seeds in a lot of different places. One is just at your local store. Often you'll see the seed racks out there with lots of different varieties of seeds that you can grow. Another is local seed saving groups, such as seed savers that have local chapters where you go and exchange seeds with other people. And one of the other places is online or in seed catalogs, like we mentioned before. Almost every seed catalog has their own online version, which is what I do. I love flipping through here, finding out what I'm going to order, and then hopping online and placing that order. I do want to caution you about purchasing from places like eBay, where I have seen some illegitimate seeds on there, such as like rainbow colored tomatoes that are clearly photoshopped. So just be careful of that because they have people out there taking advantage. But any accredited place, such as somebody who would send you a seed catalog in the mail, you can be sure that you're going to get some decent seed from them. There may be different qualities of seed from different companies or different germination rates, but overall you're going to get what you ordered, and that's really important. Now, I will buy from our local garden centers, but one of my favorite ways to get seeds is actually through seed catalogs or online through seed companies. And I'll tell you why. Because of the variety. There are so many varieties of vegetables and fruit and flowers that you can grow that you will not be able to find on your local garden center rack. Local garden centers are great places to get seeds. They have them sort of pre-selected. They give you an idea of what will generally grow well in your area. One of the challenges though to that is there's somewhat limited varieties that are available to you. So if you really want to go wild and crazy and get the best varieties, the widest variety possible, you need to go online and check out your seed catalogs. Let's talk about the information that you'll find both on seed packets in a gardening center or when you're looking online or through the seed catalogs to see what you want to buy. One of the most important things that you'll see is it keeps saying 105 days, 63 days. What is that? That's the days to maturity. So what that tells you is how long it takes for that crop to mature, either from being planted as a seed or transplanted. That's really important here in Olympia because we need crops that can grow in a quicker time, which means they have fewer days on those days to maturity. So for example, with tomatoes, a lot of them can take like up to 100 days to mature. That's really long for Olympia. You might trying a tomato that has something more like 65, 75 days maturity, and you'll get a lot more ripening before those fall rains and cold weather comes and ruins your tomatoes. You'll periodically see my cats come in and out of the shots, I'm sorry, as part of my garden. So another thing you'll see in the seed catalogs is something that says F1. So what does F1 mean? It means a first generation hybrid. So what that is you take one variety of pumpkin and another variety of pumpkin, for example, and you cross them, and then you come up with a third variety of pumpkin. Now, hybrids are generally very vigorous. They have usually very good health, a lot of disease resistance, that kind of thing. This is opposed to, for example, an heirloom, which has bred with the same variety for many years, is very stable. And a lot of people say that, for example, heirloom tomato has a better flavor. That can be true or may not be true, but it's a variety that's been around for a long time that people are very familiar with. Usually over 50 years is an heirloom. Now, one of the drawbacks of an heirloom is that you sometimes lose that vigor of the plant and some of the disease resistance. So it's not better or worse, it's just a different way of breeding. Now, not every seed catalog has this information. Some seed catalogs like this, Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, one of my favorite places. They have great varieties. I love trying all the different things, but they generally don't put a lot of information. Sometimes they will about the days to maturity, but generally they don't have a lot of that information in here. So you have to know a little bit about the vegetables that you're growing to know whether that's something that would actually grow well in Olympia. But they have a lot of variety. I love their catalog. It's beautiful, isn't it? The last thing I want to talk to you about when selecting seeds is a lot of, pretty much all seeds will say non-GMO. And I just want to caution you, don't pay extra for non-GMO gardening seeds because there are no GMO gardening seeds. All gardening seeds are non-GMO. Only farmers can actually get GMO seeds. So I'm not anti-GMO, but if you are trying to avoid GMO seeds, don't pay extra just because a package says non-GMO, because all gardening seeds are non-GMO. So now that you've selected which seeds you want to grow, it's time to actually start planting them. And believe it or not, January is not too early to start planting some of the seeds that you have. Some of the seeds that I start in January are for cold weather crops like kale, lettuce, that kind of thing, and also some longer growing warmer weather crops. So I will actually start tomatoes this January or early February and start them in my house, which is where all my plants start. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do this though. One way that I have here, this is a brand new thing that I've just tried. These are little hemp blocks. So what I love about this is that they're renewable and they're clean. There's not a lot of dirt. So all you have to do is basically wet these little hemp blocks, put your seed in there, and then keep them moist and the seeds will grow. I started these lettuce seedlings a couple of weeks ago and they're doing pretty well. So this is a brand new thing for me, giving that a try. We'll see how it goes. I think pretty soon I'm going to have to pot these up, so to speak, in a larger pot with more actual soil around them. Another way to start seeds is to use a single container like this, fill it up with some growing medium, and then sprinkle a bunch of seeds in just one little pot like this. Once they start growing, then you will actually do what's called pricking them out and take out the little plants one by one and plant them into larger cells or trays. So my preferred method of starting seeds is actually using these seed trays. This gets me about 72 starts in a tray, and for you that might be all you actually need for your entire garden. I need a little bit more than that. Plus I also grow some extras to sell, but these are one of the easiest ways and most time-effective ways I have found to start seeds. I used to start this with this method where I would do them in a tray, and that would save me a lot of space when I was starting. However, it was very time-consuming to prick out those one by one and then plant them into larger trays. Now I found that I can go longer and have fewer potting up steps if I start with something like this, which is kind of a good combination between space saving and also time saving for me. Now that you have your seeds, you're ready to start planting. I'm going to show you the method that I use, and that is planting into a 72 cell tray. So you're going to need a couple of things. One, obviously a 72 cell tray, or any type of tray this size that has individual cells that you can plant into will work. You could also use, if you wanted, use a different method, you can plant into anything. A yogurt cup that you poke holes in the bottom. Some people make the little paper cups that they plant into. I don't have the patience for that, but God bless you. In addition to the cell tray, you'll also need a 10-inch by 20-inch tray that will actually hold the cell tray together so that you can carry it and not have them fall all over the place. So that's our first step. We'll put it into the 10 by 20 tray. I'm going to turn that here. And then the next thing we're going to do, obviously, is put in some growing medium. So what you need is something that is sterile. Basically, that's the most important thing. I have here some sterile seed starting mix. This is probably the best thing to start your seeds with, but you don't absolutely have to. You could start it with any sterile potting mix that you have. I don't recommend going out and grabbing soil from your garden, and here's why. When seedlings start growing, they're very susceptible to disease. They're very weak, they're just getting going. They need all the help they can. That's why we start them out in a sterile mix, because one of the things that people encounter most frequently when they're starting their own seeds is a little thing called damping off. And what that means is you'll have a seedling growing and it looks great, it looks fabulous, and all of a sudden you'll come back the next day and it's wilted and killed over, and it looks like it's got a little tiny stem right near the soil. That is a fungal disease that results in killing your seedling, which is a waste of time and money for you and really, really disappointing. So one of the first things that you can do to prevent that from becoming a problem is starting your seedlings with a sterile seed mix. So let's get this tray filled. This is going to be messy because I normally do this over a tray of soil, so I'm not used to doing it this way. Okay, that looks full, right? Wrong. You got to shake that baby down a little. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I first started working, growing my own seeds, is that I didn't put enough soil in these little seed cells. And so what happens if you don't do that is that you don't get a lot of soil in there. There's not a lot of soil for the roots to grab onto. And then when you try and take it out, the whole ball of soil just falls apart, and that's not good for you or your seedlings. So what I do is sometimes I shake it down like that, but usually what I do is I go in and I go 2 by 2, poking down, and you'll find, especially in the corners of the pots of the entire tray, that those are the ones that didn't get the most soil. That's where I find most of the time. So I go in and push those down, spread that in, and grab a little bit more soil. I usually do this a couple of times. So get the corner, get the corner, get the corner. Okay, now I'm gonna do that again. And then go over again. And that should be pretty good. So the next step here is to take your tray and actually water it first before you put your seeds in. This is going to make your life a lot easier, because when this comes in, this is actually fairly dry, and so it takes a little bit to get it all soaked up. And what you risk if you plant it before you water it is then washing your seeds out. So let's go water this. I like to do it in my house when my husband isn't looking. It's nice and warm, and we'll come back with a nice watered tray. Now that we have our watered tray, you're going to notice it has some heft to it. It feels pretty heavy. Pay attention to that, because that's one of the things that's going to help you know when it's time to water. It may look like it's still kind of moist, but if you're moving your tray around and you're like, that's a lot lighter than it normally is, you know it's time to add some water to them. The other thing is that you want it to be nice and moist, but you don't want it to be soggy. You don't want to have a lot of water dripping out of it. Having things too wet could cause your seeds to mold or a lot of other disease issues. So a couple other things before we get started. These aren't totally necessary, but they're helpful. One is a little seeder, which helps you to get just 1 or 2 seeds in each tray without having to do it kind of with your hands. It's a lot easier, especially with small seeds. Another is your plant label and a pencil. These are critical. You will think you will remember what you planted, but unless you only planted about one thing, you will forget. I promise you. I've done it too many times to count. So you have your plant labels and a pencil. The pencil is the best thing on these plant labels because it will not fade in the sun. So what I like to do is when I pot these up or take them and transplant them out into my garden, I will then keep these same labels going with them. And even at the end of the year, I can still read them. Whereas if you did a marker, which is what I started using when I first started doing this, it fades. It fades really fast, and then you'll wonder what you planted there. It's not very helpful. The other thing that is helpful in planting is called a dibble. This is the first year, this is sort of a mini dibble, but this is the first year that I've had an actual official dibble. Normally I just use a little piece of rod or dowel that works just fine. A pencil even would work. And what this is going to be used for is actually to make the holes where we're going to plant the seeds. Now there's a question about seed depth. How deep should you plant your seeds? Well, usually on the back of your seed packet, it will tell you approximately how deep to plant your seeds. So this one says actually sow on the surface of the soil. Some seeds need light to actually germinate. And if you plant them in the soil underneath and cover them up, it won't get light and you'll get really poor germination. So pay attention to that. But if it doesn't say on the back of your packet how you should plant them, the best way is to figure about twice the depth of the width of the seed. So if you have a seed that's about 1/4 of an inch across, you would plant it about 1/2 inch deep. So let's get started first making our dibbles. Now we have our holes in the soil where we're going to plant our seed. Next thing I'm going to do is make the plant label, because otherwise I forget. I get kind of excited and just keep moving on, and then I wonder what I planted. So first one here is a new one, never grown it before. It's called Bulgarian Giant Leek. Another benefit of using pencil, when you mess up, you just erase. Okay, putting in my plant label. And I'm going to do a couple rows of leeks. So one of the things I like about this type of envelope is it actually has a resealable flap on it. And so I can just take out however much seed I need for this particular planting and then use it again later this year, the next couple of years actually, because this seed will last for a while. So I'm going to grab my little seeder here. First time having one of these, I'm a little excited. So we just dump some seed in there. That's plenty. Then we're going to put the seeder cap on. At 0, it's not letting any seed out at all. And then there are different size holes for different size seeds. So I'm going to scoot that back. And I think this is probably going to be about a 2. And then I'm just going to, there it worked just like that. I don't know if you saw it. But a couple seeds just fell out just like that. And then go a couple more. There we go. Actually, this little tipping motion is pretty handy. I'm really liking this. I've never used it before. So it's actually giving me more like 2 or 3, more like 3 or 4 seeds. And I think if I was more careful, it'd probably be less. But I always kind of double plant anyway because I have plenty of seed. And I don't want to come up later with something that doesn't have any seed at all. Excuse me, any seedlings at all. So we'll take this off, dump this back. And I had to say that was actually a lot faster than just using my fingers, which is what I've done in the past. So we've got our leek seeds. Now these are the ones, remember, that said that they were going to germinate. They need to be on the soil surface. So I'm not going to do anything with them now. Once they start growing and they've grown up a little bit, I'm going to kind of tuck them in a little. But for now, I'm just going to leave those open so that they get the light that they need to germinate. So next we're going to have arugula. I've also never grown arugula. Probably lots of you have. It's also known as rocket, I think primarily in England. I think around here we usually call it arugula. But it's called rocket because it's supposed to grow super fast. So I'm going to make my little seed label. And I'm going to do 2 rows of this one as well. Pop that in there. Get some arugula seeds. Yeah, this one we're just going to, you'll see. I'm gonna pop this on. This might be a 1. Let's try it. It's 1. Okay, it did work with 1. Sometimes you have to tip it back a little to remove a seed that's blocking the way. Actually, I almost find like that's most helpful. And I'll do one more over there. Perfect. Okay. Put this back. Now this one, since according to the seed packet and to my knowledge, it doesn't require light to actually germinate, I'm going to go ahead and kind of close up the little holes that we made with the dibbler. I could probably use the dibbler for this or some other tool, but I'm using my finger. And that, we'll tuck those little guys in. There we go. Those are all set. Now we'll finish seeding the tray here. I'm gonna try 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, perfect. I can still put all of these in. So a couple other ones I'm trying. This was a brand new one for me. Cabbage Violaceo di Verona. Isn't that beautiful? It's got these purple streaks in the cabbage. I normally don't grow cabbage because I hate dealing with cabbage moth and cabbage caterpillars that come on them, but I'm gonna give it a try this year. And then we've got the blue curled scotch, traditional. My husband loves kale, so we plant a lot of that every year. Landis winter lettuce. I've never tried that either, so that's a new one for me. Lettuce devil's ear lettuce, also new for me. And this, Mizuna Beni Haushi. I have no idea if that's how you say it, but it's sort of like a purple dandelion type looking thing. And I've never grown that. So we're gonna plant these and see how they do this year. So here we go, we'll get these planted. Okay, now we have our seeds all planted, tucked in, and ready to wake up, actually, not go to sleep, but they're all labeled. The most important thing at this point is that this not dry out. You do not want it to be too wet, but you do not want it to dry out. Seedlings are very susceptible to drying out at this phase, and they have no ability to tolerate drying out. If it dries out, it's likely you will kill your seedlings and at least you will weaken them. So one of the things that you can do to help your seedlings not dry out is to cover them with a dome. This is not entirely necessary, but it does help keep the moisture in and actually a little bit of warmth as well. So all you have to do is put that dome on top of your seedlings and they are ready to go. Depending upon your seed, it may take a few days to a few weeks for them to germinate. Once they do germinate and you see green growth coming up out of the soil, you want to remove the dome, because at that point, moisture is going to become your enemy. Having too much humidity and too much moisture will actually weaken and make your seedlings susceptible to things like damping off. One of the other things that I do is when the seedlings start coming up, I start running a fan that blows just a little bit of air, but it also moves the seedlings and helps them grow strong seedling stems instead of being weak. One of the final things that you'll need to do is make sure when they start growing that they get really good light. If you're starting in a tray like this, I recommend putting them under some hanging lights. I'll put we'll go and do a shot of my setup so you can see that. Or if you're just doing them in little containers, you can do it on the windowsill or under a lamp, anywhere where they get really good light. However, if you do set something on a windowsill to get light, you need to make sure you rotate it because the seedling is going to lean toward the light and you want them to grow nice and straight. So make sure that you rotate them every day when they start emerging from the soil. This is my seed starting area. I have some lights hung underneath the shelves on this wire rack, and then I just stick my seedlings under there and they get really good light. I recommend a setup like this if you are serious about starting your own seeds. This cost me about $100 to put together and I just assembled it myself. I zip tied the lights to the undersides of the shelves, and it was a lot cheaper setup than many that I had seen in some catalogs. So if you are interested in one way to set up your lights, and this is one system. So that's all it takes to grow your own garden from seed. You can have vegetables, fruits, flowers that are different and not seen in anybody else's gardens. And you could be the envy of your friends trying out new things each year. Some of them are utter failures, I'll be honest. You'll try that and you're like, well, I won't grow that again. But some of them become awesome family favorites that you grow from year to year. Thanks for watching Oly Grown TV. We want you to be part of it, so please send us your gardening questions and even a video of yourself asking a gardening question or showing us something in your yard that you have a question about, and we'll answer it on Oly Grown TV. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Happy gardening, everyone.